The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the small heater in the corner. Sunlight came through the window and touched the old piano that sat against the wall, worn from years of use. In the middle of the room, a young girl with curious eyes was looking at her father. He was sitting on a small stool, fingers gently resting on the keys, not playing yet, just letting them feel the cool touch. She tilted her head, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and wonder. "Dad, what is this?" she asked, pointing at a stack of papers and an old tape recorder on the corner of the table. The father looked over, his lips curving into a small smile, as if memories had been called back by her question. "This? It's just some old music I used to work on a long time ago," he said softly, his eyes drifting over the papers, some of them faded and yellowed by time. The girl stepped closer, picking up a piece of sheet music carefully. "Can you play it?" she asked, her voice full of hope and excitement. There was a sparkle in her eyes, a kind of determination that made him laugh quietly to himself. He shook his head slightly, but the smile stayed. "It's been a long time. I'm not sure I remember all of it." He glanced at her, seeing her patience and eagerness, and felt a small tug in his heart. She was always so curious about everything he did, and maybe it was time he shared this part of himself with her. The girl's excitement grew. "Please, just a little. I want to hear it. I want to know what you made when you were young." Her voice was gentle but persistent, like a soft wind that could move even the heaviest branches. He hesitated, remembering the old days, remembering the person he had written it for, and then he nodded. "All right, but just a little. Don't expect perfection." He moved his fingers to the keys and pressed down slowly. A soft, quiet melody began to fill the room, delicate and careful. It was a song that carried years of feeling, a song that had waited silently for someone to hear it again. The girl sat cross-legged on the floor, listening with wide eyes. She could feel that it wasn't just music. It was something more. There was a story behind each note, a memory wrapped in the gentle rise and fall of the melody. She looked at her father, noticing a small sparkle in his eyes, a mix of pride and sadness, and she realized this was something very special. "Who was this for, Dad?" she asked quietly, afraid to break the spell of the music. He stopped for a moment, fingers resting lightly on the keys, thinking about how to answer. It had been so many years, and yet it was still so vivid in his mind. "A long time ago, there was someone important to me," he began slowly. "Someone I admired, someone who inspired me in ways I can't even explain. I wrote this song for them, but life got in the way, and it never reached them." His voice was soft, almost a whisper, but the weight of the years carried through each word. The girl tilted her head. "Why didn't you ever tell me about it?" she asked, a little puzzled. He sighed, looking down at the keys, and then back at her. "Sometimes, things from the past stay with you because they're too personal, too fragile to share. But I guess it's time you knew." He smiled at her, a gentle, tired smile, but there was warmth in it too. She moved closer and put her hand on his arm. "I'm glad you're telling me now. I want to know everything. I want to understand you, all of you." Her words were simple, but they carried a kind of honesty that made him feel lighter than he had in years. It was the kind of moment that reminded him why he loved being a father. Her presence was enough to make even the oldest memories feel alive again. He leaned back slightly, thinking of the past, thinking of the nights he had spent writing in small, dimly lit rooms, trying to capture emotions in words and notes. He remembered the excitement, the hope, the fear, and the long hours when it seemed like the world didn't notice him at all. And yet, here he was years later, sharing this with the most important person in his life, his daughter. "Do you want to hear more?" he asked, a hint of mischief in his tone. She nodded eagerly, eyes shining. He began again, this time playing with a little more confidence, letting the melody flow freely, letting the room be filled with the music that had been waiting for so long. As the notes danced in the air, the girl imagined the past, imagining her father as a young man, full of dreams and determination. She could see the struggles he faced, the people he met, the moments of joy and disappointment. Each note was like a story, each pause a memory. She felt like she was discovering a hidden world, a world that had always been there, but that only she could now see. The father watched her as she listened, noticing the way she leaned forward, completely absorbed. It reminded him of the first time he had written the song, imagining someone listening, hoping they would feel what he felt. Now it was her, his daughter, sharing this connection, bridging the gap between the past and the present. When the song ended, there was a quiet pause. The room felt almost sacred, as if the music had left something behind, something that couldn't be spoken with words alone. The girl clapped softly, a gentle smile on her face. "That was beautiful," she said. "I never knew you were this amazing." Her praise was simple, honest, and it made him laugh softly, shaking his head. "I'm not amazing," he said modestly. "I just tried my best. Life doesn't always let us do everything we want, but we keep going, don't we?" She nodded, understanding more than he realized. She didn't need to know every detail, only that her father had dreams, and that he had worked hard to follow them, even when it was difficult. She picked up the old tape recorder again. "Can we keep this safe? I want to remember this forever. I want to be able to listen whenever I want." He agreed, helping her place it carefully on the shelf, among the other small treasures they had collected over the years. It wasn't just a tape. It was a memory, a story, a piece of his heart. Later, as the afternoon sun started to fade, the father looked out the window, thinking about how much had changed over the years. He had faced challenges, heartaches, and moments of doubt. Yet, in this room, with his daughter by his side, he felt a quiet kind of triumph. The music had survived, and now so had the story behind it. The girl sat beside him on the stool, leaning against his shoulder. "Can you play it again tomorrow?" she asked, her voice soft and full of hope. He smiled, placing his hand over hers. "Of course, we'll play it as many times as you want. And maybe someday, I'll tell you the whole story of why I wrote it." Her eyes lit up at that, eager for the adventure and the stories that lay ahead. As the evening came, the room filled with warmth, not just from the fading sunlight, but from a feeling of connection, understanding, and love. The music had brought them together, and the story was only just beginning. And though the father didn't say it out loud, he felt a sense of peace. The past had returned, not to haunt him, but to remind him that some things, like dreams, music, and family, could last a lifetime. Years ago, before the little girl was born, the father was a younger man full of hope and dreams. Life had not been easy. He worked long hours at a small job to support himself, often coming home exhausted, but his heart was always drawn to music. Every night, after the world seemed to quiet down, he would sit by his piano or guitar and let his thoughts flow into melodies. Music was the language he could speak when words alone failed him. One day, he learned about a man who had achieved something remarkable. This man had built a business from nothing and inspired countless people along the way. The young father admired him deeply. There was something about his determination, his vision, and the way he carried himself that spoke to the father's own dreams. He wanted to honor that inspiration, to create something that captured the feeling of hope and determination he saw in that man. And so, he began writing a song. It wasn't easy. Every note had to be just right. Every word had to carry the weight of the emotion he felt. He spent nights scribbling lyrics, rewriting lines, and practicing melodies until his fingers ached. Some nights, he sat alone in the dark, listening to the city outside, wondering if anyone would ever hear his music, if anyone would ever understand what he was trying to say. It was a lonely process, but it was also beautiful. The music became his friend, his confidant, his way of speaking to a world that often ignored him. At that time, he had only small opportunities to share his work. He played at tiny events, open mic nights, and gatherings where the audience barely paid attention. Sometimes people clapped politely, sometimes they didn't react at all. Each time, he felt a mixture of pride and disappointment. Still, he knew that creating music was about more than recognition. It was about honesty, about putting a part of himself into something that could outlast him. The song he wrote for the man who inspired him was different from anything he had ever made. It carried a sense of longing, of respect, and a quiet optimism. He poured his feelings into it, hoping that even if the man never heard it, the song would still exist as proof that someone had felt inspired and wanted to honor that inspiration. Every chord, every lyric, every pause was a piece of his heart. He remembered the first time he played it in front of a small audience. The room was dim, with only a few people scattered across the seats. He felt nervous, unsure if the song would connect with anyone. But as he played, he noticed a shift. Even the few people present seemed to lean in, listening closely. Some nodded, some smiled softly, and for a moment, he felt that connection he had been longing for. It was fleeting, but it mattered. It reminded him why he kept going despite the hardships. Outside of music, his life was filled with responsibility. He had to make sure he could pay his bills, find enough to eat, and sometimes face nights when it felt impossible to keep going. There were moments of doubt, moments when he questioned if music was worth the struggle. But he always returned to it because it was more than a hobby. It was a part of him. It was how he made sense of the world, how he preserved hope when everything else seemed uncertain. During this period, he also learned about patience and resilience. Writing the song taught him that meaningful things take time. The lyrics weren't perfect at first, the melody sometimes stumbled, but with persistence, they grew into something meaningful. He learned to listen to his instincts, to trust his own voice even when the world seemed indifferent. And through it all, the idea of the person he admired stayed with him, guiding his creativity, giving him purpose. He sometimes imagined what it would be like if the man ever heard the song. Would he understand it? Would he know it was written out of admiration, out of respect, out of hope? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. It was a dream that felt distant, almost impossible, yet it motivated him to keep perfecting every note. Life went on, and the song remained with him, tucked safely in a drawer, recorded on a small tape, a secret part of his past. He played it occasionally for himself, letting it remind him of the person he was and the person he wanted to become. It wasn't about fame or recognition anymore. It was about authenticity, about holding on to something that mattered deeply. Years later, the little girl's curiosity brought the song back into the light. But before that, it had been a silent companion, marking the passage of time. He had faced challenges, setbacks, and moments of loneliness. But the song had been a constant, a reminder of what was possible when passion and determination met. Even though the song was never performed for the man it was written for, it had its own life. It had captured a moment, an emotion, and a dream, and in a way that made it timeless. It carried the essence of his younger self, his hopes, his admiration, and his courage. The father sometimes thought about how the world changes, how people move on, and how dreams can be forgotten. But music has a way of preserving memory, of holding on to feelings that words alone cannot. The song had survived years of silence, waiting patiently, and when his daughter found it, it became a bridge between his past and the present. It was more than just a song. It was a story of inspiration, of hope, and of persistence. It reminded him that even small actions, even quiet efforts, can have meaning. And perhaps, one day, it would reach the person it was written for, carrying with it the sincerity and emotion that had never faded. As he reflected on those years, he realized that the struggle and the passion were inseparable. The difficulties had shaped him, but the music had preserved his spirit. He had been a young man with dreams and challenges, and through it all, he had created something meaningful. And now, years later, his daughter had become the keeper of that memory, the one who could help him share it with the world. The story of the song, the story of inspiration, and the story of a young man's courage had waited quietly, and now it was ready to be seen through the eyes of the next generation. The father understood that the music had never truly been lost. It had just been waiting for the right moment to come back to life. In the present, the father sat quietly, watching his daughter examine the old tape and sheet music. Her fingers traced the faded notes with gentle care, as if trying to read the emotions embedded within them. She had always been curious, asking questions about his past, about his life before she was born. And now, holding the song he had written 16 years ago, her curiosity had reached its peak. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me about this before?" she asked, her voice soft, not wanting to upset him. He looked down, his eyes reflecting a mixture of memories and regret. He wanted to explain, to tell her the struggles and the hopes that had filled his younger years, but words felt insufficient. Instead, he smiled gently and said, "Some stories stay with us because they are private, but now I think it's time you knew." The girl's eyes lit up. "I want to know everything," she said. "I want to understand why this song was so important. I want to hear the story behind it." Her determination was infectious, and for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to share his past openly. He took a deep breath and began to speak, telling her about the younger version of himself who had struggled to balance work, survival, and the need to follow his heart. He told her how he had been inspired by a man he admired, someone who had achieved success and inspired others without even knowing it. He described the long nights of writing and rewriting, trying to capture feelings that were too complex for words. She listened intently, her eyes never leaving his face. She could sense the passion, the hope, and the quiet frustration that had accompanied every note he had written. As he spoke, she picked up the tape recorder, looking at it with renewed interest. "Can we listen to it?" she asked. He nodded and placed it on the table, letting her press the play button. The room filled with the soft, familiar melody of the song. It was delicate, yet full of emotion, and as it played, the daughter began to understand why her father had kept it hidden for so long. It wasn't just a song. It was a piece of his soul, preserved through music. Her excitement grew as she realized how talented her father was. "This is amazing," she said, her voice filled with awe. "I can't believe you wrote this. How did you come up with it?" He smiled, thinking of the many nights spent imagining a world where his music could inspire someone else. "It came from a feeling I couldn't put into words," he said. "I wanted to honor someone who inspired me, and music was the only way I could do it." The daughter's curiosity didn't stop there. She wanted to know if the song had ever been shared with the person it was written for. The father shook his head, a small sigh escaping his lips. "No, it never reached them," he said softly. "Life got in the way, and somehow it stayed hidden, but it was never forgotten. I kept it as a reminder of what was possible when you follow your heart." The girl thought for a moment, then looked at him with determination. "Maybe it's not too late," she said. "Maybe we can find them and show them the song. Maybe they should hear it now." Her suggestion surprised him. He hadn't considered the possibility, fearing it might be too late or that the song would be irrelevant. But seeing her enthusiasm, he felt a flicker of hope he hadn't felt in years. They spent the next few hours talking about the song, the memories it held, and the journey it had been on. The daughter asked questions about every lyric, every note, and the father answered as honestly as he could. He told her about the moments of doubt, the small victories, and the people who had unknowingly shaped his life. Through their conversation, she began to see not just the song, but the man who had created it, the struggles he had faced, and the dreams he had nurtured. At one point, the daughter asked him to play the song again, and he agreed. This time, he played with more confidence, letting the melody flow freely. The room was filled with the sound, and she could feel the emotions behind every note. It was as if the music itself was telling the story of a young man's hope and persistence, of the quiet admiration that had fueled his creativity. She watched him carefully, noticing the subtle expressions on his face, the way his eyes softened when he reached certain parts of the song, the way his fingers seemed to move effortlessly across the keys. When the song ended, there was a moment of silence. The girl's eyes were wide with wonder, and she looked at her father with a new understanding. "I think people need to hear this," she said softly. "It's too beautiful to stay hidden." He nodded, touched by her words. She had a way of seeing the world that reminded him of the hope and courage he had once felt, a clarity that made him believe that sharing the song could be possible. The daughter then asked if she could keep the tape and the sheet music safe. "I want to remember this forever," she said. He agreed, realizing that she had become the guardian of this part of his past. The song, once a private memory, was now part of a shared story, a bridge between the father's youth and his present life with his daughter. Over the next few days, the daughter couldn't stop thinking about the song. She talked to her friends about it, shared small snippets of the melody, and expressed her excitement about helping her father reconnect with his past. The father noticed her enthusiasm and felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. He was proud of her determination but worried about whether the song would ever reach the person it was meant for, whether it would be understood or appreciated. One evening, as they sat together, the daughter brought up the idea of finding the man the song was written for. "I think we can do it," she said. "We can try to find him online or through someone who knows him. Maybe he'll want to hear it now." Her optimism was infectious, and the father felt his own hope growing. It had been 16 years since he wrote the song, but the idea of sharing it now, guided by his daughter's curiosity and determination, seemed suddenly possible. They began to make plans, discussing ways to locate the man, to present the song in a way that would convey the emotion and sincerity behind it. The daughter suggested writing a message, including the story of why the song was written, and sharing it along with the recording. The father agreed, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. It had been so long since he had thought about this possibility, and now it felt real. As they worked together, the father reflected on how much his life had changed. He had faced challenges, raised his daughter alone, and built a life filled with small victories and quiet joys. Yet, the song remained a link to his younger self, a reminder of the dreams and hopes that had once driven him. Now, with his daughter by his side, it had a chance to live again, to reach someone who might understand the heart behind it. The daughter's energy and determination gave him courage. She reminded him that even long-held dreams could be pursued, that even forgotten memories could find new life. Together, they felt like a team, ready to face the uncertainty and see where this journey might lead. The song had waited patiently for years, and now it was ready to be part of a new story, a story shared between father and daughter, and perhaps, eventually, with the person it was meant to honor. Through their conversations and planning, the father felt a deep sense of connection with his daughter. She wasn't just curious. She was brave, insightful, and willing to take risks to see the song reach its potential. And he realized that this was more than just about music. It was about legacy, about sharing pieces of the heart and soul with those who would understand and appreciate them. As the evening grew late, they sat together, the tape recorder between them, the sheet music carefully placed on the table. The father thought about the journey the song had taken, from the quiet nights of creation to the hopeful possibility of being heard again. And he realized that the presence of his daughter had transformed the song from a private memory into something alive, something ready to touch someone else's heart. In that moment, father and daughter shared a silent understanding. The song was more than notes and words. It was a story, a history, and a promise. And with her curiosity, determination, and love, she had brought it back into the light, ready to continue its journey into the world. They didn't yet know what the future held, but together, they were ready to find out, guided by the melody and the memories that had waited so long to be heard. The next morning, the daughter woke up early, filled with determination. She had spent the night thinking about ways to find the man her father had written the song for. The father, still hesitant but encouraged by her excitement, joined her at the kitchen table. Together, they began searching online, scrolling through articles, social media profiles, and news stories. They knew it wouldn't be easy. 16 years had passed, and people moved, changed jobs, and built new lives. But the daughter's optimism was infectious, and slowly, a plan started to form. They decided to write a short message explaining the story behind the song, why it had been written, and how it had remained a secret for so long. The father typed carefully, choosing each word with thought. He wanted the message to be honest and heartfelt, not boastful or overdramatic. The daughter watched, offering suggestions and encouragement. Her input was surprisingly insightful, reminding him that sometimes simplicity carried more meaning than complex words. When the message was finished, they attached the recording of the song, hoping it would convey the emotion that words alone could not. Once everything was ready, they found an email address that seemed likely to reach him. The daughter's hands shook slightly as she hit send. The father placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's out there now," he said softly. "We can't control what happens next, but we've done our part." The daughter nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. It was a leap into the unknown, but she felt proud of what they had accomplished together. Days passed, and the father and daughter went about their usual routines, but both found their minds drifting back to the song and the message. Each evening, they would talk about what might happen, imagining different scenarios. Would the man respond? Would he appreciate the song? Or would it be ignored, lost in the flood of messages he likely received every day? The uncertainty was nerve-wracking, but it also built a quiet sense of anticipation that made every small moment feel more vivid. Then, one afternoon, a notification appeared. The email they had sent had been opened. The father's heart skipped a beat. The daughter leaned over, eyes wide. They waited, holding their breath, until a reply came through. The message was brief at first, polite but intrigued, asking if they could set up a time to talk and hear the song played live. The father stared at the screen in disbelief. After 16 years, the opportunity to share the song had arrived. They spent the next few days preparing. The father practiced the song repeatedly, making sure he could play it smoothly. The daughter helped him set up a small area in their home where they could perform. They made it comfortable, intimate, and personal so that when the time came, it would feel genuine and heartfelt. Every detail mattered, from the placement of the microphone to the lighting, because they both knew that this moment was special. When the day of the meeting arrived, the father felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. He hadn't played the song for anyone outside of a few close friends in years. The daughter offered him a reassuring smile. "You can do this," she said softly. "Just play from your heart. That's all that matters." Her words calmed him more than he expected. She had a way of cutting through the fear and reminding him why he had written the song in the first place. The video call started, and soon the man appeared on the screen. He looked older than the father remembered from the story he had told his daughter, but there was a familiarity in his eyes that made the father's chest tighten. The daughter whispered, "It's okay, Dad. You're ready." He nodded and took a deep breath. Then he began to play the song. The melody flowed naturally, gentle and precise, carrying with it the emotion that had inspired it 16 years ago. The daughter watched her father closely, noticing how his fingers moved over the keys with a mix of skill and passion. She could see the intensity in his eyes, the way he lost himself in the music. It was as if the years melted away, and the young man who had first written the song was right there, alive in the present. On the other side of the screen, the man listened intently. His expression softened, and his eyes glistened slightly, as if the music had awakened memories and emotions he hadn't expected to feel. The song spoke to him in a way that words could not. When it ended, there was a brief pause, filled with the weight of the shared moment. Then he spoke, his voice calm but filled with emotion. "This is incredible. I had no idea someone had written this for me, and I can feel the heart behind it. It's touching, and it means a great deal to me." The father felt a wave of relief and joy wash over him. All the years of waiting, all the uncertainty had led to this moment. The daughter clapped softly, her eyes shining. "See, Dad? It was worth it. The song matters. Your effort, your heart, your story." It reached him. The father smiled, a mixture of pride and humility. He realized that the song had survived not just because of talent, but because of the honesty and emotion it carried. And now, after 16 years, it had finally found its place. They spent the rest of the call talking about the song, the inspiration behind it, and the father's life over the past years. The man was genuinely interested, asking questions, complimenting the melody, and sharing how it had affected him. The conversation was warm, personal, and surprisingly emotional. It wasn't just about the song. It was about the connection between people, the impact one person can have on another, and the persistence of passion despite time and distance. After the call ended, the father and daughter sat together in silence for a moment, letting the experience sink in. The father's hands rested on the keys of the piano, still warm from playing. He looked at his daughter, gratitude and love filling his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly, "for believing in me, for encouraging me, for helping me share this." She smiled, her excitement undimmed. "I just wanted you to see it happen. I knew it was special, and now the world does too." Over the following days, the father reflected on the journey. The song had begun as a private expression of admiration and hope. It had been tucked away for years, forgotten by the outside world but never by him. And now, through his daughter's curiosity and determination, it had finally reached the person it was meant for. The experience reaffirmed his belief in the power of music, persistence, and honesty. The daughter continued to talk about the experience excitedly. She shared how proud she was of her father, how amazed she was by the way he had captured so much emotion in a song, and how incredible it felt to be part of something meaningful. Her enthusiasm reminded him that the next generation could carry stories forward, preserving memories, emotions, and connections in ways he could never have imagined. Even after the initial excitement settled, the father and daughter felt a new closeness. The shared journey of rediscovering the song, preparing to share it, and finally connecting with the man it had been written for created a bond that went beyond ordinary daily life. It was a connection rooted in shared effort, mutual understanding, and the joy of seeing dreams come to life. The father realized that this experience was more than a personal victory. It was proof that the past could be revisited, that long-held dreams could still find their audience, and that connections, no matter how delayed, could be meaningful and transformative. And through it all, his daughter had been the catalyst, the one who believed, pushed, and guided him toward this unexpected but deeply rewarding outcome. In quiet moments, the father would sometimes play the song again, this time without nerves or hesitation. It was no longer a private memory. It was a story shared, a bridge across time, and a testament to perseverance. And the daughter would listen, still amazed by her father's talent, still inspired by the journey, and still proud to be part of a story that had waited 16 years to be told. After the video call with the man the song was written for, the father and daughter felt a quiet, satisfying calm. They had experienced something rare, a moment where the past, present, and future seemed to meet in a perfect balance. The father had shared a piece of his heart, and it had been received with understanding and appreciation. The daughter, full of pride, realized that she had played a vital role in making that connection happen. In the following days, life returned to its familiar rhythm, but the atmosphere had changed. The house felt warmer, lighter, as if the music and the shared experience had left behind an invisible glow. The daughter continued to ask questions about her father's past, his experiences, and even the small moments that had shaped the song. Each conversation deepened their bond, allowing the father to reflect on his journey and share lessons he had learned through years of struggle and dedication. One afternoon, they decided to create a small album of sorts, documenting the song and its story. They took photographs of the old sheet music, recorded a few moments of him playing the song, and wrote down the story of why it had been written. The daughter suggested including her own thoughts and feelings, and together, they crafted a keepsake that celebrated the journey the song had taken. It was not just a gift for the man who had inspired it, but a memory to preserve for themselves, a testament to perseverance, creativity, and family connection. As they worked on the project, the father often reflected on how life had a way of hiding opportunities, making people wait and testing their patience. The song had been written 16 years earlier, forgotten by the outside world but preserved in his heart. And now, through persistence, curiosity, and a bit of courage, it had finally found its audience. He realized that timing could not be rushed, but when it aligned, the results could be more meaningful than anyone could imagine. The daughter noticed her father's introspection and asked about his feelings. He explained that the experience had made him appreciate the journey more than the destination. He spoke of the nights he spent writing, the challenges he faced, and the quiet determination that kept him going. She listened carefully, absorbing every word, feeling closer to the father she already admired so much. Encouraged by the success of sharing the song, the father and daughter began thinking about other ways to bring music into their lives. They considered small performances, community gatherings, or even sharing their story online to inspire others. The daughter was excited by the possibilities, eager to explore how creativity could connect people and touch hearts, just as it had done for them. The father felt a renewed sense of purpose, realizing that the music and the story were no longer just personal. They had the power to reach others in meaningful ways. One evening, as they sat together listening to the song, the father reflected on the journey of life itself. He thought about the sacrifices he had made, the long hours of work, the moments of doubt, and the nights spent dreaming. Each experience had contributed to the song's creation and to the person he had become. And now, he realized, his daughter had become a part of that journey, helping him bridge the gap between past and present, and inspiring him to continue dreaming. The daughter, noticing his quiet reflection, asked, "Do you think the song will continue to matter to others?" He smiled gently. "It might," he said. "Some things last because of the feeling they carry, not because of recognition or fame. And this song carries a lot of feeling. That alone makes it important." She nodded thoughtfully, understanding that true value was often measured not by attention, but by the emotion and care behind an action. Over time, the father began to play the song more often, not just for himself, but for his daughter and close friends. Each performance felt different, alive with emotion and connection. The daughter encouraged him, sometimes recording the sessions, and sometimes simply listening, letting the music speak for itself. The song became a living memory, a reminder of the resilience, hope, and love that had shaped both their lives. As months passed, the father noticed subtle changes in himself. He felt lighter, more confident, and more connected to his past. The act of sharing the song had lifted a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying. He also noticed the bond with his daughter had strengthened immeasurably. Their shared adventure, from discovering the tape to reconnecting with the man who had inspired the song, had created memories that would last a lifetime. The daughter, inspired by the experience, started exploring her own creativity. She wrote small pieces of music, sketches, and short stories, drawing inspiration from the father's journey and the song's story. They spent evenings sharing their creations, offering feedback and encouragement, building a small world of creativity, love, and shared understanding. The father felt proud, realizing that he had not only shared a piece of his past, but had also nurtured a spark in the next generation. One day, the man who had inspired the song reached out again. He expressed his gratitude and shared how the music had touched him deeply, reminding him of his own journey and the importance of perseverance. He suggested they keep in touch, and perhaps even collaborate in some way. The father was humbled and thrilled, realizing that the song, once hidden, had opened doors to connection, understanding, and inspiration he could not have anticipated. The father and daughter celebrated quietly, feeling the joy of their shared accomplishments. They knew that life would continue with its ups and downs, but they also understood the importance of hope, persistence, and family. They had discovered that meaningful actions, even if delayed or hidden, could still have a powerful impact when shared with sincerity and love. As the story of the song spread quietly among friends and acquaintances, the father reflected on the lessons he had learned. Life's journey was unpredictable, filled with challenges and surprises, but moments of connection and understanding were worth every struggle. Music, creativity, and genuine expression had the power to bridge time, bring people together, and leave a lasting mark. The daughter, now more curious than ever, often reminded him of the next steps they could take, from sharing more stories to exploring other creative endeavors. Her excitement was a constant source of energy and inspiration, and the father found himself looking forward to each new day, ready to continue the journey with her by his side. Eventually, the father realized that the song was more than just music. It was a testament to perseverance, a story of hope, and a symbol of the bond between a father and his daughter. Every note carried emotion, every pause held a memory, and every performance reminded them both of the journey they had shared. The song had begun as a private expression of admiration, but it had grown into a living story, touching hearts and inspiring others. In the quiet moments, as the father played the song and the daughter listened, they both understood that the true value of the experience lay not just in recognition, but in connection. They had discovered that life's greatest rewards often come through shared understanding, patience, and the courage to follow one's heart. And through it all, the song remained a reminder that even the smallest actions, carried out with sincerity and love, could leave an enduring mark on the world.